The time is 6:34, and a quorum being present, I call this meeting to order. This is the Tewksbury Conservation Commission meeting. First item on the agenda are the approval of minutes for March 6th, 2024 and March 20th, 2024. Are there any comments from the commission of those minutes? Pretty standard looking.
I'll make a motion to approve the March 6th and March 20th meeting minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. All right, next item on the agenda is a public hearing, request for determination of applicability for 76 Kendall Road. Is there anybody here for that? Could you please come up and introduce yourself?
Hi, how are you? My name is Dan Matson.
And could you just walk us through what your project entails and what you
Yeah, absolutely. So because of the amount of rain that we've been getting, we've just been having trees fall on both our cars and damaged parts of our house. Then we got a legal notice from our neighbor, from his attorney, that one of the large trees in our yard was threatening and leaning towards his home, and had that fall, and that would also damage his property. So my project is basically to remove the trees that could fall on both my house or my neighbor that I received the notice from, and also the neighbor on the right side of me as well, threatening his shed. So just that stretch going along my backyard.
They're fairly small trees. They're not gigantic pines or anything like that.
The one tree that's leaning towards his, the one I received the notice from the attorney was a large pine, yes. But for the most part, fairly small. And then there's one that's at the end of my driveway entering my backyard that, should that fall, that could land on my daughter's room. That's on the top story of our house. That's probably the most direct threat. But other than that, they're relatively small.
Are you cutting any trees on your neighbor's property?
No.
The map shows.
No, the map is off. Yeah,
Okay.
so if you see you can see where his shed is. Just to the left of that is the divider line. Yes.
Oh, so the property boundary is just wrong? on
Yes,
this map.
correct.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Before I open it up to the public, because this is a public meeting, so I'm looking at the special conditions to accompany the determination. The first one is the applicant shall install and maintain perimeter controls around the area of work to prevent the deposition of debris from tree cutting activities into nearby resource areas. Perimeter controls shall remain in place until all areas erodible materials have been stabilized at the site. And then the second one is the applicant shall leave the tree stumps in place after the trees have been cut down and remove any debris resulting from the tree cutting, or the applicant shall remove the tree stumps and remove any debris resulting from the tree cutting and stump removal. Is there a reason why it's or?
That's entirely up to the discretion of the commission, Mr. Chairman. So those are kind of the two options with tree cutting work. So I wanted to leave it up to you folks and what you thought was most appropriate.
So I guess before we say anything, do you have plans on removing the stumps, or do you want to just get rid of the trees?
The trees that, such as a large pine, that's I received the notice from his attorney from, I would leave those stumps there. That's not really much of a concern, but the stumps directly behind my house, I'd like to remove just to make use of that area. And we have,
Are you planning on having ground or physically,
digging them out.
you're going to dig them out?
Yes, yeah, myself.
They're not, yeah, they're not terribly large.
No, they're not, no. And when we moved into the property, there was already a few stumps that were dead and full of carpenter ants that I removed myself. So I'm aware of the work.
All right, so I think for this special condition, I would just, I guess, leaving the larger pine tree stumps in place while removing the smaller stumps.
Sure.
You know, roughly, I think it said 21, I think it said roughly 21 trees were being cutting down.
Yeah, but I included 3-inch diameter trees.
So like 1 or 2 stumps is going to stay, is that the idea?
I'd probably say 6 to, yeah, around 6, fairly large, yeah.
So Dan, can I just ask a question? If we say perimeter controls, does that mean it's up to them to decide what to put up? Because usually, don't we say silt fence or?
Yeah, I guess,
So that's typically when we're trying to manage the deposition of construction debris, where this is technically natural material. We just don't want a bunch of wood chips getting deposited into the waterway that's in the rear. That's why I had cited it as perimeter controls, because it's a little less onerous, and it's really just making sure that the limit of work stays
Okay.
as close to, just not going any further back than you have to.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
So it doesn't have to be a physical barrier, it's just good management of the,
Yeah.
okay,
Yep.
thank you. I didn't understand that.
all right. If there's no further discussion from the commission, this is a public hearing, and I will open it up to anybody in the public who would like to make a comment. I just ask that you go up to the podium and introduce yourself. But yeah, you just have to go up to the podium.
Just a really quick question.
And you need to
Speak into the microphone.
introduce
Okay.
yourself.
My name is Linda Willis, and I live on Livingston, abutting this property. So my only question is, are the stumps that you're clearing behind your house, do they impact the banks of the little stream?
That's, no, I wouldn't say they impact the one stump that's closest to the stream is right next to the culvert, which is already kind of, that section of the stream is very secure. So there's nothing getting removed along the stream itself.
Okay, because that stream has a tendency to overflow if it's backed up where
Yep.
you are.
Yeah, we've had it flood several times, but again, the large, the pine tree that was threatening my neighbor's yard, that's probably the closest to it, and that's well above the bank. And right in that section is the culvert that then goes underneath my
Under the
neighbor's
ground.
property. Yeah,
Okay. All right, thank you.
sure.
Thank you. And I don't think this needs to be said, but just no wood chips should make it into the stream.
Yeah, good note.
Yeah, or the culvert.
Yeah.
All right, if there is no further questions or comments from the public, could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. And could I have a motion for a negative determination as discussed at this meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, request for determination of applicability for 1880 Main Street. And could you just introduce yourself, and then the floor is yours.
Sure thing. My name is Allison Maisley. I am the compliance manager at Treehouse Brewing Company, 1880 Main Street. And the purpose of today's hearing for the RDA is to move a structure that is used as a beverage service station near the fifth hole on our golf course, a little bit over. And after having met with the previous conservation agent and building department, to place 4 helical piles underneath it to make it a permanent structure at that spot. And the helical piles would provide it with the foundation that is needed for that.
All right. Is only 4 of these helical piles?
Yes.
All right. And do you know how far they go how deep they go into the ground?
I believe the plan is to actually have them above the ground. But because it is in the 100-year floodplain, that's why we're here for your,
They're not actually like drilled into the ground, they're just placed on top?
there may be pilings in the ground, and then the helical piles would be placed on top, but the pilings would be very minimal.
All right, any other questions from the commission? Give us some time to look at these. Any questions or comments from our agents?
So I
Not,
guess I'm going to disconnect here. Helical piles are normally screwed into the earth. In just looking at the specs, it doesn't look like it's a attachment to an existing concrete footing.
The plans say it's at least below the frost line, which is at least 4 feet at minimum, so.
Right, so
So they are going into the ground, and I think,
Okay.
and then there's structures attached on top, right?
That might, I'm here as the representative, not the expert. I apologize.
okay, well, the helical piles are big screws that go into the earth. to
Yes,
stabilize
yep.
it. So,
But I believe the plan for the helical piles was to allow water flow, at least a little bit, so it may be,
yeah, it will be raised up off the ground, so there's only 4 points of contact.
exactly.
All right. And is it that, the structure already exists, but it's like located right on the patio or something? Is it that one that's being moved?
So
or is it-
there's two. So this one is a secondary one that is currently out by the fifth hole, but that is right on the cusp of, I believe, our property and maybe the state.
All right,
And so, and that is also much closer to wetlands, so we figured moving it just a little bit further into the golf course and a little bit further away from those wetlands and definitely on our property was probably the best way to go.
all right. All right, if there's no further questions or comments from the commission, this is a public hearing. Anybody from the public who would like to make a comment, I ask that you go up to the podium and introduce yourself. And not seeing anybody rise, could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Chair votes aye as well. And could I have a motion for a negative determination of applicability as discussed at this meeting?
Before I make that motion, I'll just read off the special conditions that are listed. Install and maintain erosion and sediment controls, which shall include of a properly entrenched silt fence and/or straw wattle around the area of construction as to prevent the deposition of sediment from construction activities into nearby wetland resource areas. Erosion and sediment controls shall remain in place until all areas of disturbed loose soil and other erodible materials have been stabilized at the site. Additionally, prior to any construction activities commencing, the following must be completed. Erosion and sediment controls shall be installed by the applicant or an agent of the applicant, and the conservation agent shall inspect and approve of the erosion sediment controls. If after the commencement of construction activities, it is determined that dewatering is necessary, please contact the conservation agent to inspect and approve of dewatering methods.
Okay, so as long as those are followed, we're okay to move?
Yes.
Okay,
Along with the
Just
general
checking.
conditions of.
yes, of course.
Yeah,
We call them special conditions, but they are.
for everyone.
They're
Pretty
the
standard.
real conditions, okay? Thank you very much.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor with that amendment. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate the time.
All right. And agenda item C, request for certificate of compliance for 1418 Main Street. Just please introduce introduce yourselves for the record, and the floor is yours.
Chris Duggan, 1418 Main Street.
And Tom Schomburg of Civil Design Consultants. We performed the as-built survey on the property. We've concluded that the as-built appears to be in substantial compliance with the design plans. There were a few minor deviations, and they were noted in the submitted substantial compliance letter. Also had a field visit on Monday to review the as-built plans. It was observed since the time of filing that the plantings that were one of the deviations abutting 1426 Main Street were replanted. Their positions do differ slightly from the design plans. They were pushed outward along either end of the fence just to provide additional screening for the abutter. But with that, we'd like to, make the request for the certificate. If there's any questions, be happy to answer them.
My only question is, the riprap slope is not quite a riprap, it's more like.
More of like just kind of stone from the
It's
site.
boulders and stuff that were on the site that we just used to kind of delineate that line between the property and the wetlands.
All right,
So instead of trying to haul them off-site, we just use those and kind of use as a buffer between the two.
all right. But it's basically like a
Just like a
small
rock
rock
slope
wall.
kind of, yeah.
Probably,
All right,
maybe, at best 2 feet.
all right, yeah,
It's not like that, yeah.
yeah.
All right, another note on both letters sent to the town. One calls it a 6-unit and one calls it a 7-unit multifamily. Which is it?
So it's a 6-unit residential with 1 commercial component. And that was part of the mixed-use approvals.
Okay.
Is it,
The first letter says 6, and the second one says, well, the earlier dated says 7, and then the May 15th says 6.
is the one that's on the end that's slightly larger than the rest, that's,
Yes.
that's
So
the
that has, so the
commercial?
lower level is actually the commercial component for
Okay.
that property. Yes.
Do you have a maintenance plan for the Cultec and the StormTech system?
One was provided at the time of filing. I don't have it with me today, but
Who's going to be responsible for that?
The homeowners association will take care of that part of their subcontractor. Will take care of the cleaning the strip drain every spring
Okay.
and any other associated maintenance.
And that's recorded in the deeds, I assume?
Yes, that they're doing.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the commission or our agents?
I'm good.
That's the case, then could I have a motion to approve this certificate of compliance?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Agenda item D, public hearing, notice of intent for BSC Group, Inc. on behalf of New England Power Company, 339/349 Transmission Line Row, DEP file number 305-1199. Is there anybody here for that? And could you just introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
My name is, excuse me, my name is Shona Patasteas. I'm with BSC Group. I'm here representing New England Power Company for the 339-349 transmission line project. So the 339-349 transmission line project is a 17-mile-long project that starts at the Tewksbury substation, which is off of Washington Street or New England Power Company Road in Tewksbury, and it goes all the way into Saugus. Within the town of Tewksbury, it's generally about a east-west kind of traversing line, but then as you start to get a little bit closer to Saugus, it turns and kind of goes north-south. The line was built in 1976, and an ACR project, an asset condition refurbishment project, is kind of a larger scope or larger magnitude of replacements and repairs on the project. So the considerable amount of the work that will be done is repairs, replacements to the existing structures, most of which is exempt maintenance under both the Wetlands Protection Act and the Tewksbury bylaw, Wetlands bylaw. The exempt portions are typically where you have the existing structures, and those were replaced with in-kind, substantial in-kind structures. Currently, the line is built with two-pole wooden H-frames, so it's two very large poles that have a cross arm that suspends the wires. Each of those will be replaced with a steel direct embed H-frame, so it looks substantially similar, except it's just going to be steel instead of wood. In certain cases, in some situations, those wooden poles will be replaced with steel poles. And where they're replaced with steel poles, they have a concrete foundation. You can't, to give them a little bit more structural integrity than the direct embed lines. This can be where they're crossing a highway or a major river, so the two poles on either side are suspending a specific type of overhead configuration. They just need a little bit more sound. There are 6 locations within Tewksbury where these structures will be replaced within wetlands with these larger diameter, these kind of larger foundations. 3 of them are right outside of the substation in the very large wetland complex. I think it's the Cedar Swamp area. We'll be taking out, I believe it's 4 structures and replacing with 3. So overall, you're going to reduce the number of structures that are in that area, but they will be replaced by these kind of larger structures. Other components of the project include overhead maintenance, so they're not changing out the actual conductor wires, but they will need to get to each structure in order to transfer the wire from one structure to the next. In some cases where there are existing steel poles, they'll be replacing some insulators and other overhead components. The second part of kind of the project is the repair, upgrade, improvement of the existing access along the right-of-ways. There's kind of, we've attempted to characterize the kinds of repair and improvement of the access roads. You'll see in the application, we have a type R, type S, type 1, type 2, and those just describe kind of those different segments of repair. A type R, type S are kind of lower, smoothing out of ruts, filling in potholes. There's already a fairly good access in place. And when you get to the kind of the type 2, that may be where there's, the base of the road isn't as good, so they have to add some gravel to make that a little bit more structurally sound for the vehicle traffic. Each of those roads are kind of marked on the mapping along with the kind of the coded type 1, type 2 sort of designation. The work, we're planning to start the work this summer, starting in about August or so. It'll go through about 1.5 years with the end of construction for the entire 17 miles, ending in March of 2026. So it's about a 20-month or so construction period. We would anticipate that the construction matting would go into wetlands across the project for the entire duration, with crews kind of moving in and out of the line as they go to each of these individual locations, first to change out the line and then perform the overhead work. So there could be periods of activity where there's more crews in place and periods of activity where it's a little bit more silent on the line. BSC Group will be employed as environmental monitors for the duration of construction. We have a number of different permits in place already, namely a 401, 404, which has conditioned us to go out on a weekly basis to inspect construction. And we will have a SWIP as well. So we'll have to go out after rain events of a quarter inch, or I believe it's a quarter inch or more. So we will have environmental monitors kind of up and down the line throughout construction. In addition to kind of the wetland areas, there are some natural heritage estimated priority habitats. I did forward the letter from, the determination letter from Natural Heritage. Because we had a number of complex permits, we started consultation with Natural Heritage in about October of 2022. And we resulted with a no-take determination with a number of different conditions to follow, species specific. We didn't initially send the determination letter in because we've been asked not to share the names of the species that are throughout the right-of-way. So then the letter that I sent is just a redacted version of that. The commencement of the project will start first with the installation of sediment and erosion controls and construction matting. I did not show them on the plan set that was submitted with the notice of intent. I believe that was one of the comments that we had from our reviewer, that we should have the BMPs, kind of the lines of erosion controls showed on the plans. We do have a plan set that was sent to the potential contractors that shows the suggested recommended locations of erosion controls. With the application, one of the attachments showed kind of the general specifications of the types of erosion control barriers and other kind of BMPs that'll be deployed across the project. So at any of those locations where we have it marked on the map, you might see silt fence, you might see straw wattle, dependent on the conditions or field conditions of the project. We have, resulting from the construction of the larger towers, we have about 360 square feet of fill, that net increase when you, from the new concrete towers. So part of our application, we're proposing a wetland replication area within the general area of that kind of larger wetland complex. New England Power has had past projects where we've had, these kind of smaller amounts of wetland loss. And in the same area, there are a number of different replication spots. So the one that we've proposed is not in conflict with the previous replication areas, but in the same general location, kind of off of that New England Power Company road. We did have a wetland scientist go out and review the area prior to pulling together the plan, reviewed kind of the existing species, the topography, invasive species, and that plan kind of pulls together those notes with the suggested list of species for that replication area. I think one of the other recommendations that was made in the reviewer's letter was to make sure that we had at least a 2-year monitoring period that would be reviewing for invasive species with a removal program if we did see that our replication area was starting to become vegetated by invasive species, and we're very open and amenable to that our monitor would be going out on a yearly basis and looking for invasives as well. I think about covered it, but if you have any other questions.
Just a quick question. The
Sure.
existing wooden H poles that you're taking
Yes.
down, are those removed from site?
They are removed from site, yes. I believe New England Power has a kind of a recovery program where I think they're sold off to firewood or kilns or recycled somehow or another. I'm not entirely sure.
We don't want pressure-treated wood from 1976 lying on the ground.
No.
I think you may have covered this, but one of the things in the review letter, the project route, it's gonna follow the same path that previous projects have, covered.
We did deviate slightly, but we can follow the previous path. I think that what we had proposed might have been a little bit more like a straighter angle, but if we prefer to go to kind of that, the same route as the previous projects, we can amend that entrance to follow that previous route.
I guess it doesn't matter so much. I'm just curious about the current conditions if the previous route has now recovered to what it was before, does it make sense to continue on that route or, create a new route that's gonna hopefully recover in the same, amount of time, I guess?
Right, and that is something that we could consider kind of at the time when they put the matting in, if it makes more sense to kind of follow the path of where maybe there is previous disturbance or to kind of cut through the straightest path.
All right. Just, whatever you decide, note it down and,
Sure.
in a report.
How many of the species fall within the Tewksbury boundaries? Because the report's for the whole 17-mile extent, correct?
It is. I believe there are, so the report, the natural heritage letter, there was kind of 2 categories of species. So New England Power Company has a standing kind of general permit almost with natural heritage that allows operations and maintenance. There are several species where kind of our general conditions under that plan apply and are enough protection to avoid the take. And then there are several other species where we had additional conditions on top of that. Within Tewksbury, I believe there are 4 species, one of which had kind of those extra special conditions.
Okay. And then you said the construction timeline's this summer until 2026?
Until about March 2026.
What's the timeline within the Tewksbury extents? Because I'm sure you're not doing the whole 17 miles at once.
No, so the timeline, We know the outage windows, so when the line will be out of service, out of power, in order to do some of the overhead wire work. We're in the process of getting a contractor on board, so when the contractor is kind of in and out of a given area was be dependent on their schedule. So we don't have that schedule at the moment.
Not super wetlands related, but should we expect, loss of power for any extended period of time?
No. So the outage window is determined in part on what New England Power asked, but also in the kind of the regional operator of the grid. So they'll just divert power from another source.
It gets back to the construction timeline. So what was the answer to that? What's the time frame within the Tewksbury Extends to do work?
So we don't have the schedule yet from the contractor to determine exactly kind of when they would be,
So
in
you
a
left means and
particular
methods
area.
completely up to them?
The schedule is up to them because they'll have the crews, it's dependent on how many crews, kind of what kind of equipment, the schedule at which they're going to put in the specific borings.
So you just put in a substantial completion date in the contract?
So we give them an outage window that says, here's when you can do the overhead work, here's when that line is going to be out, and they'll have to determine exactly what kind of equipment they need to get in and out and what type of work they will do.
How much soil disturbance is going to occur with this project?
So soil disturbance, we'll have the construction matting within all of the wetlands that, construction matting is a BMP that's meant to reduce soil disturbance. So, it deflects the weight of the machinery, so it's kind of even throughout the wetland. Soil disturbance is typically where they'll be digging the new foundations or putting in the new structures, and that's about 28 or so to 50 square feet for the concrete caisson foundations, and a little bit smaller for the direct embeds. Soil disturbance would also be up and down kind of the axis that's displayed on the plans. And I believe there's both kind of that linear foot and the total square footage of what they're expecting for kind of grading up and down those roads. When we say grading, that's dependent a little bit on the type of access road, but that's typically not like a cut and fill situation where you're introducing more material or cutting into the side of a slope. It's more smoothing out existing ruts or adding stone material and smoothing that.
You're going to be coring these footings in? Yeah, like you have before.
Yeah.
Just so you people know, I've been called to their site before, years ago, and they've always done what they've said they were going to do. I have no problem at all.
Do you have approval from all the other conservation commissions throughout the route?
We are in the process in the next 2-3 weeks. We're in front of all of the commissions. We've already met with 2. There's a concurrent one tonight, and then the rest will be kind of all in the next few weeks. So we're getting there. I just wanted to find that number for you for the total grading. So this is kind of that up and down the access roads, generally within the 100, it's divided out by resource area, but within about that 0 to 100 foot buffer zone, it's about 28,500 square feet of disturbance related to the access roads. That's just in the buffer zone. There may be additional.
And you already mentioned it, but so you're going from 4 structures to 3 structures, but 2 of them are bigger and can go further.
Yeah.
So you're just deleting one that's in the middle.
Yes. Yeah, so the steel structures, especially when you put them on those concrete foundations, they can support a heavier load, which is why you can eliminate one of the structures and make the spans in between longer.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments from the commission? Do the agents have any questions or concerns?
This time.
Not this time. Before I open it up to the public, this is a notice of intent and public hearing. Is there anything stopping us from approving this tonight?
Not necessarily. So you folks had received the review letter from Bill Manuel, and my thought was you can either decide to pull conditions from that letter right now. You can allow the applicant to respond in kind to the letter, and then you kind of evaluate their response. And perhaps give the time to put together some conditions before the next meeting and hopefully approve that evening if there's no outstanding concerns. But you're also welcome to do whatever you like.
Yeah, I guess I would like to see the response to the review letter, and then, yeah, giving us a little bit of time to create special conditions that you can agree or
Sure.
disagree with and hammer that out.
I will say, if you don't mind, the letter had a couple of recommendations for, mostly for environmental monitors and for review, having a wetland scientist review the construction of the wetland replication area. And New England Power has no problem, no concerns with any of those conditions suggested in Bill's letter. But we can certainly reply
Because
to
you said
that.
your company is going to be doing the environmental monitoring, right?
They will.
So that will meet that condition.
Well, I like the idea of seeing it in writing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's, I don't know how you folks feel, but
That's
I like
Yeah.
that.
All right, so this is a public hearing. It doesn't sound like we're going to close it out tonight, but I will open it up to the public for anybody who would like to make a comment, with the understanding that we'll be here next meeting and the public hearing will not be closed, and you'll have another chance to make any questions or comments at that time also. So I'm not closing out the public hearing, but if anybody would like to get up and make one at this time, you are free to do so. I just ask that you go to the podium and introduce yourself.
How you doing? My name is Virgilio Bancarotti Jr. from 1500 Shawshene Street. We're a direct abutter on the project, an easement holder, the National Grid. Come here to ask you to review this project as it stands. I believe the location you're talking about where 4 poles goes to 3 is on our property. I'm not sure, 4 to 3. I happen to be meeting with somebody else regarding last year's National Grid project and some issues we're having over there. And they happen to bring up, while we were walking around the parking lot, some surveyor marks where a pole is looking to be relocated. We've been there about 22 years. There's one in our parking lot that, we built curbing around for parking lot, separation between us and the wetlands, and dumpster enclosure in front of it to kind of hide it and block it. Now we're being told that's looking to be relocated. This big H-frame and one of those 50-foot poles being in our parking lot, in a parking space. Obviously we have a number of concerns with that. One, it's within the wetland buffer zone, and ask that be preserved as it was intended to be. Another concern is safety. Now it's in the parking lot. It's a heavily used area of the parking lot by East Elite Gym. I've been there tonight to pick up these pictures. It's probably 50, 60 cars out in that area where this pole is going to be placed. And they're typically after school, so afternoons and evenings when it's darker. It's also an area where snow removal tends to take place and pushed. It's a pretty large parking lot area, so as you can imagine, big storms. There's a lot of snow that builds up, but it's also terrible. I'll show you some pictures, terrible eyesore on top of just environmental concerns. And, we also have complaints from our tenants already, not liking the poles that National Grid put up last year in this wetland area. And now, they're looking to put in ones that are twice as tall. So we asked to have that reviewed before any sort of approvals take place. I don't know if I can show this. So this is the existing location that I was talking about. Sorry, I can't find the microphone and hold this at the same time. So here's our dumpster pad. This is that H-frame, I believe you called it. It's kind of been made into a peninsula to go around it so that it doesn't interrupt with the parking. So the parking's kind of split up by this pole. So in front of this is kind of where our assembly use tenants park. Behind it is where the more industrial, commercial tenants park. So that pole now is looking to go more into the assembly use area, parking area. So there's a spray painted survey mark right in this parking spot where it's looking to go. This is one of the structures added by last year's project, which we didn't speak out against because we didn't really understand the full scope of what was being proposed. And even if it wasn't for last year's project and meeting with the individual, I wouldn't have even known about this. I got the notice, I requested the documentation, I read through it. It's not the easiest to understand. Really, the map is a 10,000-foot view, so as far as pole locations, it doesn't really do it any justice to illustrate how this is now going to end up in our property. I'm not happy about it, to say the least. This might be a little harder to see from general further away, but this is the parking lot. So this is our building here. This is the front area of the parking where our more assembly use tenants park. That's the existing dumpster enclosure and the existing pole. So the existing frame's right here. They're looking to move it here with one of those poles into the parking lot area. I've met with their, I guess, liaison, I would call him, Matt Watkins, kind of expressed my concerns about that. Asked numerous times, including right before this meeting, why can't we just keep the pole there? It's, for as long as I know, it's been there for at least 22 years. Why do we have to move it now? Why do we need to move it into the wetland buffer zone? Wetland buffer zone was created to keep such structures out of it. I got the response, engineers are looking into it. So I'm just here to ask you to really think about allowing this structure to be moved into this wetland buffer zone. Is it really required? Why can't we just keep it where it is? And I'd also like to ask, are there any more looking to be relocated on our property? Because there's one towards the street side, which is also a large steel one that was replaced several years ago to a single steel, it's not even a frame, just a single steel pole, just huge diameter. There's that one by the dumpster enclosure, and then there's another H-frame on the back side of the property. Are any of those also being looked at as far as relocation? And do you have a map showing or survey marks as to where those are going to be moved? Because my concern is those are also going to end up in our parking lot area within the wetland buffer zone.
All right, so I don't think the commission can provide you any answers to those questions tonight.
Sure.
I asked if you would like to attempt to answer some tonight, you're totally welcome to, but also I would appreciate, if you could have some sort of communication by, in the next meeting, addressing some of those concerns. That would be appreciated.
I can address the location of the current structure and generally the relocation. Current structure where it is, it needs to be replaced for the same reason that, most of the structures need to be replaced. It's asset condition. It's original structures are built in 1976, so it's replacing the structures that are kind of the end of their life or nearing the end of the life. My understanding, and I'm happy to have Matt reach out to you again, or to ask, National or New England Power to have Matt reach out to you again. But my understanding from the engineering design is when they replace the structure, they can't replace it in the exact same spot because of the outage conditions. So they would need to tear down the structure and build it, and there's not really a place for the wire to go. So they have to build a new structure. It's usually within about 10 feet or so of the existing.
This is about
Unfortunately,
80 feet away.
Yeah, so unfortunately, in that location, we can't move it towards Saugeen Street because there's a kind of an existing drainage swale right in front of the structure. And then if you were to move it kind of a little bit forward, there's guy wires from the wires that kind of anchor some of those structures in place a little bit further up. So there's a lot of obstructions from some of the other existing structures and lines in the area that prevent that pole from being.
I can walk it, but there's space,
Yep.
But yeah, I just wanted to voice our concerns as far as these relocations. Now, is that the only pole in our property that's being relocated, or is there others?
The other structures will be replaced, and similarly, they're within that kind of 10-foot buffer of the existing. The structure you're talking about is the only one that is being relocated kind of at further distance. The existing structure is in a buffer zone. The entire structure is in buffer zone, so when removing it, it's actually pulling it out toward the edge, that outer 100 feet of the buffer zone. And I believe even one of the two poles will be in that outside of the buffer zone.
The one in the middle of my parking lot? Yeah. But I'd like to see if you could also have a surveyor lay out the other pole relocation, because they seem to have done it for this one location, but not the other one. I'd like to see how far into the back end of our parking lot they're looking to do that as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to take those concerns back to Matt, and I'm sure.
He's aware of them, so yeah. All right.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Yep.
I also have a easement on my property, and they sometimes come and just cut everything down, whether I like it or not, so it can be frustrating. All right, if there are no further questions or comments,
Hello, my name's Chris McClave. I live on Kendall Road, and the power company easement goes across my property. So I was just interested in knowing if I could find out with more specificity, like how my property is going to be impacted, whether it's going to be noisy or dusty or whatever the issue is going to be. But is there some place that we can get more information?
could one of the agents please respond?
Are these details contained in the notice of intent narrative?
The details about the stages of construction are in the narrative. Specific to a single property, no. But again, we do have a liaison, which I'm happy to kind of refer to this person. Or send a copy of the NOI, either.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have the notice of intent package in the office, but like she mentioned, it's not going to be able to zero in on your property specifically. But if you want to, after we're finished with this public hearing, I can give you my contact information.
Okay.
And I can email you the general plan.
Okay,
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank
We
you.
might be able to locate it on the plans, generally where your property is, to give you a better idea.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. All right. If there's no further questions from the commission or from the public, I will entertain a motion to continue this agenda item to the next meeting on June 26th, 2024.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yep.
All right. Last item on the agenda is agenda item E, emergency certification for 447 Rogers Street. Is there anybody here for that? Could our agents fill us in on the details?
Sure, so the contractor for the work applied for a permit to tie into sewer earlier this month, and upon reviewing that it was within 30 feet of the wetlands and notified of that, he submitted the failed Title V inspection, which warranted the emergency certification.
So this is a pretty standard emergency certification.
Has the work been done?
Yes, they have to complete it within 30 days of the order.
I think
so-
we just ran into that not so long ago, that it hadn't been done yet. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, this one's been done.
Okay.
Yeah, the one that hadn't been done yet, actually, they applied for a traditional RDA because they were electing to tie into sewer. It wasn't due to a failed Title V. This is a failure.
All right. Any other questions or comments on this emergency certification? Not hearing any. Could I have a motion to ratify the emergency certification?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. All right. Any old business, new business, or administrators' reports?
Dan, old business, now it's June, and we were told that there would be planting of trees at the Ames Hill project. And I was wondering if anyone's heard anything about any planting being planned or?
Yes, so after the last meeting, when you had brought it up, I reached out to the landowner, and he is in the process of ordering the evergreens. The trouble is finding the quantity and all of the same height is what is causing the delay, but the order is in place, and it should be, coming in the next couple of weeks, and I've asked him to please keep us apprised of that.
Great, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
All right, if there's no other discussion, could I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Next meeting is June 26th.